I just read a really interesting article from Le Monde. A friend actually sent it to me. Economist Thomas Piketty is arguing that the United States' growing militarism, especially with the recent war against Iran, is not a sign of strength, but a sign of weakness. He says US elites increasingly recognize the country is economically and politically fragile. Instead of addressing those problems through investment regulation or social reforms, some nationalist leaders have chosen a different strategy, relying on military power to secure economic advantage. According to Piketty, the goal of this strategy is not ideological or moral, it's financial. The United States possesses the world's largest military, and leaders like Donald Trump appear willing to use the power to secure economic deals and access to resources around the world. He argues that Trump has made this logic quite clear. The United States is prepared to strike deals with any regime, whether in Iran, Venezuela, or elsewhere, as long as American companies can gain access to valuable resources such as oil, minerals, or strategic assets. Piketty compares this approach to the behavior of past European colonial powers. However, he says the problem goes deeper than just Trump himself. The events of the past year have exposed structural weaknesses in the American political system. Piketty notes that the US president has been able to govern largely through executive orders with limited resistance from Congress or the Supreme Court. In his view, this shows how fragile democratic institutions can become when power becomes too concentrated. He also argues that the Republican Party's shift towards what he called extractivist nationalism is likely to continue even after Trump. This approach combines aggressive nationalism with a willingness to use military force to defend economic interests abroad. Piketty links this political shift to long-term economic decline over the past 2 decades. He says the United States has underinvested in education, infrastructure, and regulation. As a result, it has accumulated large trade deficits and a growing external debt, now equal to about 70% of GDP. Because of those economic pressures, he believes some American leaders see military power as a way to compensate for declining economic strength. Still, Piketty argues that this strategy is ultimately unsustainable. It may create temporary political illusions, but it cannot change the underlying economic realities. Over time, he expects the United States' share of the global economy to decline. He also says the United States will eventually fade uh, and will face growing pressure from the global South to address issues like economic inequality and climate reparations. In response to what he sees as a dangerous shift in American policy, Piketty argues that Europe must develop greater independence and global influence. And I completely understand where Thomas Piketty's coming from. Trump's ruining the United States' reputation by taking reckless military action like this. And You know, I would argue that Piketty doesn't go far enough. I don't think it started 2 decades ago. I think it started, gosh, 7 decades ago. All you have to do is just look at the history of Iran and say, hey, we overthrew the democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, because we didn't like what he was doing with Iran's oil. Um, and that got the Shah involved, and he has his own secret police. And obviously, the people didn't like that, so that ushered in the Islamic Revolution. And of course, now we have what's happening now. And of course, Reza Pahlavi is going to speak at CPAC because, of course, he is. um, but you know, talk about the Iran-Contra affair too, and talk about what we did in the DRC and in Chile and Guatemala and Panama and so many different places where we decided that we didn't like the leaders of the foreign nations, and then we plundered it and did whatever we wanted, and those countries are even worse off now than when we had originally started. And so this is a long history. Um, you could argue that the Republicans' transformation started with Barry Goldwater in 1964. The conservatives were like, "Oh, goddamn, we don't want that to happen again." And so they they got Nixon in there and Reagan, and of course Reagan's the hero to many conservatives, and really all the bullshit that we're dealing with today probably starts with him. Um, but I think what Piketty's talking about is a stark reminder to us that what Trump is doing now is going to affect us even when he's gone. And I don't know what president is going to be able to undo so much damage in so little time. Can it be done? Yes, of course. But it's going to take a ton of fortitude. I hope somebody has it, because I wouldn't want to be left behind. I know in Trump's first term, Europe stopped inviting us to stuff because we weren't contributing anything reasonable. And it could happen again, and won't look it won't look particularly good if it does. So anyway, that's it for my Sunday. Hope y'all have a decent and enjoyable weekend, rest of it. Um, if you'd like this content, please like and subscribe. I'd really, really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.